Hello and welcome to a special presentation from In the Money Media. As we do ahead of major race days, we sit down with our man who is a Race Lens power user, Matt Vagvolgyi, to talk about these said big events. How you doing in anticipation of this year's Breeders' Cup, my friend?
Good. I love the Breeders' Cup. Love the Breeders' Cup betting challenge. It's my favorite contest of the year. If I were to pick one, that would be it. But no, feeling good, getting close to a couple of really good days of racing. And I have to say, I like the West Coast Breeders' Cup better, I think, than the East Coast. A little bit of a later start, little opportunity to get your stuff together, so to speak. So, but now looking forward to it. It's going to be a great couple of days. And I mean, looking at your jacket, Pete, I mean, you're feeling it as well. So excited to be with you. Talk some stats here.
Can I turn enough to get the back on there? Can you see the Del Mar lettering?
Oh, I love it. There you go. I love it. Add it to the PTF collection of extraordinary clothes. That's all I'll say.
Speaking of Breeders' Cup, we do want to let you know that our friends at Race Lens do have a special on right now for a quarterly unlimited subscription to Race Lens for just $99. That's $200 off the regular price. Go to Equibase.com, navigate over to the Race Lens tab, use the promo code BC99. That's BC99 to take advantage of this. We talk about it all the time on these shows. It's a past performance product. It's a research tool. There are so many different elements. Anything new that you've been playing around with in Race Lens to tell people about before we get into the slides that you've prepared for us today?
Still playing around and getting into the miles per hour, feet per second. It's there's not a ton of sample, but there's much more than when it started. So just having every card being included, having that data there, able to build some decent subsets there. It's a little difficult for days like this, Pete, because it doesn't include a lot of the Euro horses, and it's just some of the data is a little bit limited there. But I would say that's something that I've been looking at throughout the year. And just added there's some minor tweaks there of just specific races that are being added in there. One we'll go over today. Instead of picking a post position, you can select the outermost post, which I think is helpful because sometimes you got to dig in there and say, okay, if I'm looking for the 14th, stall, but with 5 scratches, all of a sudden it's moving in. So I think such little things like that can help. But no, they're adding little things here and there all the time that are certainly helpful.
Let's get to these slides. I do have a writ large post position question for you, but we'll tackle it as it comes as we pull up the first one here, looking at Del Mar post positions on the turf. You can see there, as you were talking about, looking at these outermost posts. What does this tell you? I mean, pretty fascinating that the outermost on a turf route, which you'd think would be a disadvantage, sure doesn't seem to be.
No, it doesn't seem to be. But again, I think you got to parse through this a little bit, Pete. And again, I think this is the advantage of Race Lens, of being able to see what the stat comes back. I've showing it for a year. You can look at it over 2, 3, 4, and 5 years. So you get a larger sample of this. But also, too, as I mentioned many times on these, Pete, you can go through the details and actually see all of the races that are included in this stat. So on a win percentage, it doesn't blow you away, but I will say on both of these. So if you look at it from a turf sprint, 78 starts, 9% winners, you're negative, but it's not a big negative ROI there. And then the same thing, you're looking at it from a turf route, very similar in terms of win in the money percentage. You're a positive 8%, so you're in the positive there. In both of these subsets, Pete, it wouldn't be something I would hang my hat on in terms of having the outermost post in either one of these. But there's also multiple bombs that come into the subset here.
Interesting.
So if you look at it from a turf sprint as well as the turf sprint, there are 3 horses that are 35-1 or more. And then on the turf route, there's a 35-1, there's a 48-1, and a 50-1. So you've got some big bombs that play into this. And you've got a lot of horses that were taking money on both of these samples. So it's a little bit kind of back and forth there. But I think that helps to look through it a little bit and say, okay, what is the stat actually telling me? There's some big prices in there. But, again, the win percentage doesn't blow you away either.
Just to talk it through, yeah, I mean, I was referring to the ROI, which you've already kind of explained away. The other thing I would think about is, all outermost posts certainly not created equally. You have plenty of races with 7, 8, 9 horses as opposed to 14 in the Breeders' Cup these Breeders' Cup juvenile races. And I don't know, just looking at the raw results from last year, it's certainly not a you can't win from out there thing. But then again, using common sense, you don't want to be out there. We've got these big favorites once again in these outermost posts in the juvenile turf races. How are you personally going to look at the chances of Precise and Gstaad with those posts?
Yeah, I think that's why it's worth the discussion, right? It's not like a back in the day, the rail in the Kentucky Derby, like death nail, forget it, right? It to me, it's not that case at all. But it is interesting. I think it's worth the discussion because you've got some favorites. You've got a horse like Precise, where I think is the most likely winner of the 2 days, getting the outermost post. Personally, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. I think. I think you can get your trip. I think the talent of talking about that particular horse, I think can overcome that. The one thing to consider, though, you do have some turns that come up quick, which could float you out, kind of into no man's land. But for me, Pete, it's something that's interesting, but I don't think it's going to stop me from betting horses I like if they're posted out there.
And as that stat we showed suggests, maybe sometimes the crowd overreacts a little bit. Some of the reason those big long shots were as big long shots as they were might have been people dismissing them and saying, oh, they can't win from out there. And then a horse that should be, 8-1 can become 20-1 pretty easily when, you get that market signal and it kind of feeds upon itself. So it's interesting for sure. Let's move on to your second slide to share with us. Bob Baffert, no stranger to success at the Breeders' Cup or Del Mar. Talk us through what you found with him and his combination with Mike Smith.
Yeah, I started to kind of went a little bit out of order in terms of like post position for the turf and the dirt, but I wanted to start off with what I think the most interesting stats relative to kind of what's playing out. I think the post positions we talked about on the turf for some of these races are interesting. I also think Baffert coming off a layoff, I thought was an interesting at least look to see, has he done it before? Is he successful at this? So I broke it down a couple different ways. Looking at grade one specifically, 45 days or more coming off the layoff, and looked at it from a year, looking at the 45 plus day layoff, much less of a sample when it comes to the 2-year-olds, which I think is the most interesting kind of subset out of all of it. But over a year, again, 22 starts, 18% winners. I mean, 61% in the money. You're down there, but that's to be expected given that it's Bob Baffert, a lot of these grade one stakes. But in the same criteria with 2-year-olds, again, not a whole lot of sample here. It's something he has done before. He's been successful with 29% winners out of that sample. A very healthy 190% return when it comes to the 2-year-old. I think that's the big question there, Pete. So for me, when I look at this, it's not something he does often, but it's something he has been successful in the past. And to add on top of that, there's been, I don't know, discussion within, friends of mine talking about these races and Baffert and Mike Smith over kind of a longer term relationship. And as it's kind of whittled down as he's gotten older, right? I thought Mike Smith made a great comment where they asked him about, kind of being the second or third or maybe even fourth choice sometimes to Bob Baffert these days versus what it was in the past. And he made a great comment. It's better to be on the bench than off the team. And I think that's exactly where exactly where Mike is. And I think that's absolutely perfect. And listen, these guys are still hitting at a high clip. I mean, if you look at it, over the year, 28 starters together, 32% winners, still a positive 4% ROI and over 72% of them in the money. So I thought that was an interesting kind of connection there as Bob and Mike are going to hook up this weekend in the Breeders' Cup.
The obvious horses on the top part of the stat to follow up on. You've got Hope Road with that type of layoff. You've got Nisos, right, with that type of layoff. And then with the 2-year-olds, Brandt. I mean, Baffert's won the race 6 times, juvenile, but none of them have this pattern that Brandt has. And even though that's a small sample there, the 2 for 7 or whatever it is, that does give me more faith that he can do it. Because I'm remembering sort of the high-profile ones in this race that didn't do it. I think it's going to be tough. Ted Nafi's going to take all the beating in there. But that does make me think, you know what? I'm not going to stand entirely against Brandt. Do you have I should have prepped you for this, and we can come back to it if not. But the Mike Smith stat, there's so many races to look at. I don't have in my brain which of those big Baffert contenders that Mike is on off the top of my head. Do you have that at memory here?
I don't, but as we kind of talk through it, I can I
You
can
can do the old stallifying thing and take a
I can
quick
pull
look
it
through
up
the
and
PTs
yeah,
and look. Yeah,
exactly.
it's always fun to connect these stats to the horses that they're with. I mean, Baffert, obviously, I feel like anything he sends out, you've got to give extra credit to when it's Del Mar, when it's the Breeders' Cup. Nobody's had more success on these major stages, but like with all successful trainers, when you can find something that they don't do well, if you can try to pick on them a little bit and find situations where you can at least kind of soft fade them, if not toss them out, well, that's a way to maybe try to get an edge in competitive days of racing like the Breeders' Cup. What did you turn anything up there?
Yeah, I'm taking a look through here. So in the juvenile filly, we're looking at is it bottle of Rogue. Is that
Bottle
what
of
you call it?
Rouge, who also
Bottle of
and
Rouge.
Bottle of Rouge is another who has the layoff angle as a 2-year-old. I forgot
Right,
about her
right.
for a second.
Yep.
Bottle of
So
Rouge, the cleverly named daughter of Vino Rosa.
yeah, sorry, I've got on my super small 1,000 screen that I have up here, Pete. So, but again, I think the idea here is this is not any is you should never take a stat and run with it completely, but it's more of I look at it kind of build my base, build my foundation of is this something he's done before? Is he successful? I'm looking at more of is he wildly successful or is he just in complete no man's land where this is not something that he does well? That's kind of what I'm looking at for these stats here. And then I kind of just build as I would, normally off of that. But to me, this is more of building that base, kind of getting an idea from an extreme standpoint and then kind of moving forward.
At the end of the show, I'm going to ask you for one horse that I know, if you know one yet, one horse that you know will definitely be a key for you in your various wagers. But we'll come back to that at the end. We're going to continue to move through the slides. We're going to go back to post positions. We're going to go to the dirt. There's been a lot of talk in my circles about the negative rail at Del Mar. It sure looks like when we pull up these stats, that's not just horse player conjecture. That's reflected in the numbers over the course of the last year. The rail has not been the place to be, seemingly because of geometry and advantage. Also, every short field race, every 5-6 horse field still has a rail runner. They're supposed to win a lot more than 14%, 34% in the money, and that ROI is not good. Let's put it that way. What is this an actionable stat to you when you're looking at runners like Kopi and like Fierceness who've drawn, well, bad examples. Those are both Kopi and good example. Fierceness, bad example because that's a route. So we'll keep it to Kopi. I'm sort of looking for a reason to maybe fade her a little bit in that spot after that draw, and this gives me the confidence to do that a little bit more than before. How do you interpret this stat?
Yeah, I think this tells you something, especially on the sprint side. And you got to focus on the sprint because the dirt routes are a bit different. I mean, Fierceness proving that, even when he tried to jump over the rail,
jump the rail and still won. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So he still figured out how to get that done. But on dirt sprints, again, the win percentage obviously doesn't jump off the page. The negative 38% ROI, going back to being able to see the details of each race. These horses are taking money too, right? So that's playing into that negative ROI. What I've seen is you're forced to go, and that, I think that's the biggest problem when you look at Del Mar specifically. You can say this for I think for Saratoga sometimes too, like these like tighter turn, like you're forced to go. You have to go forward. If you try anything, if you're trying to come off the pace, you're going to get shifted, God knows how many wide, or you're really going to be at mercy of what's in front of you. The only way to get position is to do it as fast as you can going forward. And I just don't think that's been a recipe for success. And I think that plays into this number, Pete. So again, this is something that does tell me something. I think the rail is a difficult spot to win because I don't think it gives you very many options when you leave the gate.
That's a great point too about plugging that into your race design. If it's a horse you think is going to go from gate to wire, maybe it's not so bad. I'm not saying I'd get off every rail runner, but if it's a horse that doesn't want that trip, maybe you got to take a second look at that race. Let's go on to look at these stats. We're moving on to the turf, and we'll start with Aiden O'Brien. I mean, geez, what a year he's had again. What a few years at the Breeders' Cup. It feels like something got figured out a few years back in terms of, I don't know if it's the shipping process or if it's which horses are being shipped, maybe some combination of the two. But when I was lucky enough to visit Ballydoyle earlier this year and talk to some of the team there, I could not believe all that goes into shipping horses. They really have it down to a science, and I think that's reflected in these numbers.
Yeah, I figured I had to put this up there. I think this is the question I get asked the most leading up to Breeders' Cup of certain trainers, but it's the Euro shippers for wherever the track is for Breeders' Cup, how they've done here in the past, and how do you think they'll compete this year? And again, I did this specifically on the mile because, again, I think this small sample over the year, but this is what to expect, right? It doesn't run a ton specifically at this distance in graded stakes here in the U.S., but when he does, again, he's not bringing his second string. He's bringing horses that can win here, and it's showing. Kind of an all or nothing in the in the first stat there. 50% winners. They were those are the only two that hit the board were winners, but still up 65% there. But over 5 years, I mean, you can see that it's a pretty solid stat. The 29% winners, 71% of them in the money too. I think that's another big one when you look at the the Breeders' Cup in general, and the 342% ROI. You'd be shocked at how many bombs get by people in the Breeders' Cup that fit this particular statistic here. So, again, this is the best part about Breeders' Cup is that you have horses that are, sometimes 15-1 plus that in any other race would be single digits. And again, that have all legitimacy to win. So there's those that are included in that stat and that big number, but still, I mean, Aiden is bringing his top horses here that are running extremely well. And then another one in general, just kind of to float that out, just I'd say out of all of the questions, the number one I get is how horses do first time in North America, specifically at the track and specifically at Del Mar. So over the last year, they had quite a few runners. 56 runners over the last meet, 16% winners, 41% of them in the money. And again, you're got a healthy positive ROI there, 54%. So certainly these horses are doing well coming from overseas, and specifically Aiden's bringing horses that can run.
Speaking of European shippers, we have info as part of our In the Money Plus package that I could not be prouder of. Speed figure equivalents for the last 3 runs, trip notes. It's so good. We know these are horses we need to be paying attention to in these turf races. If you want to know which ones, sign up for In the Money Plus. inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. You can sign up for 1 month and just get the Breeders' Cup package. It's worth it just for that. You also get everything else we do within the Money Plus, including grid picks from all the shows that we do, or most of the shows that we do, I say, as well as lots of extra content. Anyway, check it out, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. Let's move on to our final slide for this show. Matt, we're going to take a look at a couple of things that you pulled. Talk us through these key California connections. Phil D'Amato, Michael McCarthy. What are you seeing with them?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it there, Pete, of just kind of some general stats coming into the Breeders' Cup, more of a localized stats, I would say, for both of these. But something that McCarthy does extremely well. He's continuing to do well with this stat this year, that 8 to 30-day layoff, that quick turnaround in graded stakes. 22 starters, 27% winners. Again, a nice number in the money as well, but getting paid for it too. 176% ROI there. So again, something he does well. I try to find that with trainers. What's their sweet spot? Where do they feel like they're in the groove? What they're looking for? It's hard with trainers sometimes. It's the stock they have. It's just sometimes sheer luck the way this happens. But I think if you dig beneath the layers and peel back the onion a bit, you find what trainers get very comfortable with and where their sweet spots are. I think this is one with McCarthy. The other one is more of a recency. We've talked about this before, Pete. Kind of that athletic mindset of especially jockeys coming in and getting confidence over the last the meet. If you look at it from Santa Anita specifically coming into Del Mar. This connection of D'Amato and Rispoli has been off the charts. 89 starters together, 30% winners, 73% of them hitting the board, and still positive 23% ROI. This is one of those things that the public just completely latches onto over time. Still getting fairly decent prices and still getting it done. So good trainer jockey combination with some confidence coming in, as well as I think a specific type of statistic for McCarthy that he does extremely well.
Good stuff there. Definitely some relevant Breeders' Cup applications for both of those stats. Doesn't apply to journalism, but boy, well, we won't even get into talking about the Classic here because it's just too much of a moving target at the moment. We'll say that. But I do want to get back to you, Matt, and ask you that question about, a horse or horses. If you're feeling generous, you're going to bet. But I did want to remind folks one more time about the special quarterly unlimited subscription. These are stats that we've pulled for you. You can create your own. When you have an angle that you want to track, it'll pop up right in your past performances. Incredibly powerful past performance and research tool. You can get the quarterly Race Lens subscription for just $99, $200 off the regular price. Just go to equibase.com, navigate over to the Race Lens tab, use that promo code BC99. And then the other thing I did want to mention is there's always around these big racing events from Race Lens, their own, whole going over every race on the card with key members of the team. Make sure you look for that one on YouTube as well. I'm sure if you do Race Lens Breeders' Cup preview, you'll get an opportunity to find that. All right, rubber meets the road time, Matt. What do you got for us at this year's Breeders' Cup that you're going to be keying some stuff around?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound, like I'm dodging here, but I do have a few that I'll keep a little close to the Breeders' Cup vest here. Maybe some plays I think I'll make that'll be kind of all
Breeders' Cup betting challenge.
Yeah. I think Precise is the most likely winner of the 2 days.
More than Ted Nafi.
I personally do. Again, I'm probably off on, I'm probably alone in that comment there. A lot of it has to do with the data I get in for other race or international stuff that I do bet. Man, I'm telling you, it's hard to get around. It's hard to get around Precise. Again, I'm not giving you anything brilliant with a 6-5 morning line favorite, but I'm hoping that, that outermost post we talked about, that 13 hole there is maybe gives the public a little bit of a pause. But I will build some bets in and around Precise for sure. The Classic is interesting, P. I know you didn't want to talk about it, but man, I think you gotta at least mention it here. I don't know what's going on with Sovereignty. I mean, I think that's interesting. I don't know. Have you heard anything that's
haven't heard anything this morning, but I mean, I think it's 10-20% that he runs. It just doesn't feel like something that's going to happen to me, but we'll see. We're going to know more. But with him, without him, I mean, I'll say this: if he does run, he's fine. Like, this is Bill Mott, super conservative. They've been so transparent. There's no messing around.
Right.
So, but if he doesn't run, what does that do to your analysis of the race? It's tricky. I mean, I'm picking Forever Young in there. I think he is not. I think he's better than what he's shown in his 2 USA runs, and his 2 USA runs are really good. I think he's had circumstances a bit against him. But how about you? Who do you have a lean in there? Are you hoping Sovereignty runs so you can just keep it simple?
I do. I mean, Sovereignty obviously plays into Exacta's tries in terms of keying around, but my strong opinion there, I'm going back to Baeza in the Classic. I just think this horse just continues to get better and get better. Maybe it's just the love affair of wanting to, having this horse many times before, but I think this horse continues to get better. I'm looking at, odds in faraway places that are not giving Baeza much of a shot, have drifted over 16-1. If that's the case, I mean, that's going to be a big play for me. I think this horse fits, is getting better, and I'm looking for horses that are hitting their top peak. But this is a great race, though. I mean, this is a phenomenal Classic, with or without Sovereignty. But Baeza is a very strong opinion for me in the Classic, Pete.
Great stuff, Matt. Appreciate you. Thanks so much to our friends at Race Lens for sponsoring the show. Make sure you subscribe to the In the Money Media YouTube channel for more updates from the grounds, great handicapping content. We're so close to 15,000 subscribers. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Helps us out, and make sure you don't miss any of it on the In the Money Media YouTube channel.